Hello there, David Taylor or Mr. Pelargonium back with another video for the Pelargonium and Geranium Society. Now it's a very busy time. I've been up to all kinds of things. There's a bit of an announcement to make, so let's just get going. Well, hello there. It's great to see you again. I suppose I do need to put a bit of an apology out. I haven't done an actual video for about a good 3 weeks, probably the week before the show, wasn't it? Where we held our show, which was really quite good. If you haven't seen it, I just a few days ago put up the video for the show, just showing all the class winners of the open classes and a bit of review of the actual show plants themselves. So get over and have a look at that. I'll just put a link to that up there. Now the show turned out to be quite successful. We had unfortunately a couple of our top exhibitors had to pull out at the last minute, which meant that the numbers were down a little bit, certainly compared to last year. I met a good number of subscribers to the channel, so it was really nice to meet some of you at the show, and I can only thank you for being part of this lovely little group that we have here going on for the society. Now there's been an awful lot going on really since the show. I've been very busy, and just so busy I haven't really had time to think about doing videos. Even I've done the odd short, I've done the odd photograph on my Mr. Pelargonium socials, but one important announcement to make. I have done a video over on my own YouTube channel, Mr. Pelargonium, all about something that's going to be going on over the next month or two, and that is the fact that we are, Mr. and Mrs. Pelargonium that is, we are on the move again. I put all the discussion and talking points about that over on my own channel, so I think it's more appropriate to put a lot of the sort of fine detail on it over on there. So go and have a look at that. But a lot of the work now and a lot of the decisions I'm having to make about my plants are based on the fact that we are going to be moving in around about a month to 6 weeks. So there's a lot of things that I have been doing. I've been certainly cutting back any show plants that I want to retain to be used in the future. I've already cut those back. I've just had to get on with it. Now to touch on it, I am not taking this glass house with me. I'm getting a new one. I'm going to be getting a bigger one. I'm not going to go into all the reasoning behind that, but this glass house, certainly in terms of the width, is too small. I want to get a wider one. You go back to the 2018 and prior videos, you will see that I had a 12.5 foot wide one. They used to be part of the nursery glass houses, but so I want to get a wider glass house for the next one. I want to go back to a 12.5 foot wide one. Just get much more scope and movement of being able to move plants about. Plus the fact I grow a lot of standards now, and I want to be able to line them up with it and be able to walk around them without any trouble at all. So it's going to be a really interesting time. I will put a lot of that on my own Mr. Pelargonium YouTube channel, because I like to keep this channel now purely for more or less tutorial work. So there's going to be a lot going on, a lot to see, lots of fun, and it is quite an exciting time, to be quite honest. So there's going to be a lot of work to do, but it does basically mean that once we move, I'm not going to be able to be working on my pelargoniums a great deal at all. They'll get fed and watered, but that's going to be about the limit as to what I'm going to be able to do, because with my son, thankfully our son has moved back in with us. He worked up north for a number of years, but he's come back down south. So we're going to have to be doing the hard landscaping. We'll do it all ourselves. And getting the new glass house put in. But it does mean that I'm going to have to push through a number of jobs on this channel, such as repotting, I've done a certain amount of cutting back, which I'll discuss now in this video. We'll take a couple of cuttings. I want to get some cuttings done because I need any cuttings that I want to do, I'm going to have to get done before we move. because I'm not going to be able to have a great deal of time to do that at all. So it's going to be quite an hectic month. I'll try and take you along for the ride, certainly with regard to tutorials, with regard to what I'm doing with the individual plants and things like that. So we'll get going on those from today. Right, now the first thing that I'm going to do, I've actually just been out to one of my standards. It's a standard of Sammy Brown, which I've got one just over the side there. I've got two, it's a younger one, but it's thrown some lovely side shoots out from the stem further down, and I've just cut them off, and we'll just go through doing some basic cuttings now, because it's that time of year. You don't need bottom heat in the summer. You know, it's warm enough to let them grow through really quite quickly. Certainly zonals will root very, very quickly at this time of year, particularly if you get what we call heel cuttings, which I'll talk about in a moment, which have almost got little bits of root growing already out them. So these will start growing straight away. Right, so these are what we call heel cuttings. So these have been cut off a main growing stem. In this case, it's the stem of a standard, and you can see here, these were growing out. You can almost see the direct line of the cut. There was the main stem growing up that way, and I've just literally sliced that off. Exactly the same as the slightly smaller one. And basically, a heel cutting almost gives you the benefit of having a little bit of base root already beginning to grow. And this is really how cuttings almost develop anyway. If I get my little knife, you can see here that the little nodal sort of break, which has sort of sprung out of the stem there, is already beginning to develop root, and that's ideal. That they will throw out as soon as I put these in the compost, so they'll root very readily, and they'll be almost fully rooted in 2 or 3 weeks. So all I'm going to do is pull that off. You don't even really need to cut these. I've just sliced it off there, and that's fine. I actually don't need to do anything with that with regard to further cutting. The only thing I'm going to do is just slice off some of these lower leaves. Just pull them off. We'll just snap that one off as well. We have got a side shoot there, which I've used this knife to do the cut, so it's clean with regard to this plant. I'll just slice off that stipule. Just nick that stipule off there, and that's all ready to go. I mean, it really is. It's done. We've got root. I think that might be a shoot, so I'll just nick that off. But that one's ready to go. There we are. That's fine. It's clean. Just check for bugs or anything on it. Nothing on there. And that's fine. Now, the only thing we do need to do, we've actually got a little bit of what we call hen and chickens there, or proliferation. This is where we've got a bit of a flower shoot with a bit of a stem as well, and we certainly don't want that. That is going to take a bit of energy away from the plant, so I'm just going to nick that off. But you can clearly see there we've got a shoot and a bloom together. I have spoken about this in the past, and we've got another bloom there. That's just a normal bloom, but it needs to be taken off. And I've got another bloom just poking at the top, which I will just nip out there. You don't really want bloom on the plants. It's taking a bit of energy away. I'm just tidying up these bloom breaks there. So there we are, that's it. That is a pretty decent cutting. I might take that leaf off as well because it's got plenty of leaf. Don't really want any more. That's got quite a good head for a bicolour. This is obviously a bicolour, it's Sammy Brown. It's got quite good green coverage as well, which is good to see. I'm going to break that off. The reason, well, I won't break it off because it's actually bending the stem. Don't go pulling the stem too much because you don't want to harm that stem, but it's got loads of leaf on it, so I've just taken that leaf off as well. Don't want to over stress the cutting. But also when I was pulling that down, it was just beginning to buckle into the stem. You don't want that, you don't want to harm that stem at all. So I've just cut that with a knife in this case. And that's that one. Similar here, this is a good heel cutting. I'm just going to nip that again because I don't want to bruise these stems. You've got a bloom there, just nip that out. This is a bit smaller obviously. Now that is more ghosty, so I'm going to cut that out entirely. That little shoot that was growing out there was very ghosty. Ghost shoot is where there's no chlorophyll in the leaves at all, and that is going to sap energy from the plant, so you don't want that. So I'm just going to nip out there. Again though, this is a good heel cutting. Heel cuttings are the ones that really do root very quickly because they've effectively got root already developing on them. Now for my cutting mix, I actually just use my normal compost. This is the compost I use for zonals. It's quite open, very light, a lot of drainage in there. So I just use that. I don't make I always used to make a separate compost for my cuttings, but I don't bother doing it anymore. Which is what's important to be used for cuttings. You want very, very free draining compost. Put lots of sand, perlite, whatever with it. Almost sort of 50-50, or certainly no more than a good third of drainage material to your compost. That'll be fine. So I just give that a little bit of a start. Put them in. So the compost is damp because I've actually only just made it because we're going to do some potting up in a moment. But I won't water those now for a couple of days, wait for it to begin to dry out, and then I will sort of water it. The only question mark is on, say, regal types. With zonal, with these hill cuttings, the roots will want to be growing away. So, only give it a couple of days before you give them a water. If it was, say, regals, I might wait a little bit longer because you want them to sort of grow on a bit harder. But we'll perhaps speak about regal cuttings on another occasion. But there we are. I'll leave those 2 days, give them then a saucer of water to take up in a couple of days' time. Right, so we'll just park these over there for the time being. They're all right. I mean, it's quite dull at the moment, so they're not under any heat stress really. So that they can stay there. I'll put them in a slightly shaded spot for probably, I don't know, getting on for a week, and then they can go out onto the side because those roots will get out really quickly in this case. No problem at all with those. It's relatively easy. Heel cutting, dead cinch. Right, so next up we'll talk about my Berry Zest Angel Standard, which actually did quite well in the show, got the best angel. It was a runner-up to the big boy that used to be here. I thought that looked pretty exceptional, to be quite honest. I thought it was a very good plant. And you may cast your mind back to the fact that we actually tied up the middle. And I'm going to run through a video now that I've done because I've already cut that back after the show. And I'm going to just slip in the video I did of that, showing the actual cut back. Okay, so here I am cutting back this Angel Pelargonium. First of all, excuse my vest. It was a very, very hot day when I did this. So excuse my half-naked body put in front of you. I also had the camera outside because it was very hot. Now you can see me trimming this back. This is with scissors. You can see I've got a little holding sort of blanket wrapped around it. This was from the show just to stop any sort of slight collapsing that may occur. But I'm cutting this back by a good third, almost a half in many ways. really trimming back to to the string that we put in. Now I've got two strings on this. I've got an inner one, which I did some time ago, and the outer one, which I'm going to strip off in a moment. Now you can see here where I go about cutting. It's the inner node upwards, so I cut back to that inner node, which gives the ball shape which we try and achieve for all of our Pelargonium cutbacks, whether that be zonals, angels or anything. And this is an angel cut, and the inward facing node you can see just breaking there. I've got my scissors poised ready to trip off that little cut. So the inner node is upward facing and going inwards, and that's what creates the ball shape. And I'm carrying on right through now, continuing to cut, trim, and it really has done what it really has shown is that this string really did achieve what I wanted it to achieve, and that's holding in all of these tight little branches, which really does help the formation of the body of the plant and to stop angels in particular from drooping down, which is a real problem for them. There we go. So continuing just to tidy up, but that's quite a lot that I've cut off, and there's a bucket load of cut. Yeah, so there we go. That was really quite interesting because that tying in really did the trick. It held it together. I'm glad that I proved to myself that that could work. And indeed, if you've got a really big, say, potted angel, it would almost certainly work the same with a normal potted plant, because realistically, obviously, a standard is really just a head on a stem, effectively. So you could translate that head down into a normal pot plant, and it would almost certainly work. So it really did do the trick, and I'm pleased that I tried that experiment and proved to myself that it does work. So there's something that you could consider if you like growing the angel pelargoniums. Right, so the final thing I'm going to have a look at today, I'm going to do a repot. Yeah, so I've got two plants here that were in the show. Now this is Shrivenham Star, and this is the one that actually won the dwarf class, the dwarf zonal class. And all I've done is disbudded it. I've done exactly the same thing to the test plant. Now the test plant, it was looking minorly ropey, to be quite honest, on the show day. I did entry, it didn't get placed. The main reason for it is that the bloom on it came a bit early. But this needs basically a complete repot. It needs to be given some fresh compost to really boost it on. I'll do that separately, and I will film it purely because it is our test plant. Now, one of the things that I have touched on with a number of plants is the fact that I'm not getting that bulk of growth in the spring and early summer. I don't know if that's possibly something you may have experienced. So what I'm actually doing this year, I am not cutting them back as hard. And indeed, this Shrivenham Star, all I've done is disbudded it. If we have any really wacky stems that are, say, pushing out, I would stop them. But this is a very, very uniform plant, but it is just lacking a bit of density and a bit of body. So I'm actually not going to stop that, and I'm going to repot this as it is. So we'll go on with that for now. I'll put this one back because, as I said, I will film that separately and do a separate video on it. But we concentrate on this Shrivenham Star. Now, the first thing I'm going to have to do is go and mix up some more of the insecticide, which I still use as a dunk. I have had one or two plants with the mealybug. It's still going on, although nothing like as bad as it used to be. But I think it's purely down to the fact that I am using this vine weevil insecticide to keep it at bay. Right, so let's have a look here at this Shrivenham Star. And that's great. There's no sign of any mealybug in there at all, so I'm really pleased about that. Of course, taking it out of a pot does enable you to reveal a bit of the base. So I'm just going to get my tweezers and sort of get in there and just, you know, take the couple of dead leaves. doing this right-handed. I'm amazed. Yeah, don't work. Right, now the good thing about no mealybug means that I don't have to panic too much about completely stripping it to nothing. But we'll get it out. It's nice and dry. That's the important thing. Oh, there might be a tiny little bit of mealybug there, but I want to say there is a little bit of mealybug in this. Nothing too serious by any manner of means. Yeah, there is a little bit in there. Right, that now is going to be dropped in the insecticide because there is actually a little bit of mealybug there, certainly not bad. Right, okay, so compost, just drop a bit in there, probably about a third, because I've actually taken quite a bit of that compost off that root ball. So it's my standard sort of compost for zonals. And there it is, plopped in. It's quite sort of good coverage in a way. So just dropping it in and obviously just filtering round. I mean, it's not rocket science, this. Now with regard to my compost, there is still peat-based compost about the place actually, and I am still using a little bit of that in my mix, to be fair. I am putting a little bit more drainage in as well, a bit more perlite. I did speak about the composts at the end of sort of last year, I think, over the winter, but so I'm still adding a little bit of peat-based compost because I while it's still there, I'm still using it because I still think that there is nothing that can beat it with regard to Pelargonium growing. I am actually adding a bit more drainage though in my mix these days again, just purely because when using an element of this peat-free stuff, I think it gives a bit of a false situation. It can show that it's maybe dry when it actually isn't. And so I'm actually adding a bit more drainage now, a bit more of a proportion of sand and perlite. That's horticultural sand, of course. And there we are, that's sort of potted down quite well. Okay, so there we are. I've just got to slide that across there. That's a good successful potting on exercise, I think, something that you can consider. It just really does reinvigorate the plants to grow on and hopefully put a bit more strength and vigour into the growth of these plants once they're repotted and they get their roots down into some lovely fresh compost. That was actually went up to that pot almost exactly a year ago. It's the 10th of July today, and that was put in the previous pot on the 21st of July last year. So almost exactly a year it's been in there, and I think that did quite well. I will let this almost fully dry out now before I water it again. I'll keep an eye out, we'll get a saucer obviously, but that root ball's quite wet and that will sort of filter out into the damp compost anyway. So I think that's just about it from me today. There's a hell of a lot going on. It's going to be a very, very busy time. I'll try and take you along for the ride. I will keep this channel more for tutorials, more personal stuff regarding, say, packing up, moving, all that kind of stuff will be on my own Mr. Pelargonium YouTube channel. But that's it from me for today. There is a lot of other bits and pieces going on with regard to potting on, repotting, that kind of thing. So I'll probably film some of those over the next couple of weeks. In the meantime, that's it from me today. So look after yourselves and bye-bye for now.